Stand by.
You guys need this?
I think CJ
I
got
don't.
us, but we'll
Yeah.
take it just to be safe. Thanks, Eric.
Everybody good? Well, first, thank you for coming. An incredibly sad day on so many levels, but I'm joined today by the mayor of Pontiac, Tim Greimel, City Councilwoman Melanie Rutherford. We also have Kristen Blevins from Common Ground, and she can answer questions as it relates to what we'll talk about in a minute, and also Adam Genovi, who is the Chief Operating Officer from Oakland Community Health Network. And the reason I asked members from Common Ground and from the Health Network to be here was this tragedy is fundamentally evidentiary of the breakdown of our mental health system in America. We don't give our mental health providers and systems enough support and have enough resources at their fingertips for a full continuum of services. They do an amazing job with what they have, but I've been saying for years on the federal and state level that they've walked away from so much funding and key funding of programs going back to when I was a senator, and they discontinued funding of Lafayette Clinic and Clinton Valley and a host of other kinds of mental health services. And this tragedy was based in a mental health crisis. We had a situation where at approximately 3:10 p.m. our deputies were dispatched in the area of the 200 block of Branch Street. And they were told that a 10-year-old girl knocked on a door and said that her family was dead in a field. And so deputies fanned out and began to search the area, which was formerly the Lakeside Housing Projects. There's a large amount of vacant fields in that area, and tragically they located the deceased mom, a 35-year-old mother, and her two sons, ages 3 and 9. And so thankfully the young girl managed to survive. She's still hospitalized. She's in stable condition with hypothermia, kinds of conditional symptoms, if you will. Again, the mother is Monica Kennedy. She's 35. The sons are Kyle and Malik, and aged 9 and 3. The 10-year-old daughter, as I said, is in the hospital in stable condition. Our detectives immediately began to work the investigation, determine obviously cause and what were the factors that led up to that situation where the tragedy occurred. They interviewed family members and a host of other folks, and fundamentally it breaks down to this was a mental health crisis. The woman, the mom, was having a mental health crisis. She believed someone was trying to kill her and that everybody was in on it. It was a conspiracy, so including the police. We're in on this, trying to kill her. Family members attempted to get her help, but she refused, and she fled with the children. So over the course of a couple days, we actually had been getting calls about a woman and kids not dressed appropriately for the conditions. Deputies would go there, look all through the area, and couldn't find anybody. We later learned from the surviving daughter that she had told her kids anytime anybody approached to run. So ultimately they were in the field. She told the kids to lay down and sleep, and unfortunately that's where they perished. Child Protective Services is involved now. They went to the hospital to check on the child, and when the daughter's discharged from the hospital, she'll be turned over to parental care. Again, incredibly sad on so many levels. Cause of death was determined by an autopsy today. Hypothermia, the determination that the death was accidental. But I would put accidental/preventable. If we have more conversations, sometimes tough conversations that it takes strength to ask for help. It's not weakness, and that it's encouraged, and we have more available mental health services to everybody. I think it will go a long way. All across society, we're seeing more and more people that are anxious, depressed. We're responding daily to suicides and overdoses. And oftentimes, overdoses are self-medication. And so basically, we're seeing death every day as a result of the mental health crisis in this country. And it sure would be nice if Washington and Lansing tuned in on that. So as we move forward, that's going to be our message. We're going to try to push some of that into the community. With me, as I said, we have some of the resources that are available, and they can speak to it. I don't know if either of you want to say anything first. Whoever wants to go first. So I asked them to come again to speak to the resources, the mental health resources and the support services that we have. In Oakland County, we're blessed to have dedicated, great people. But as I said, so many of these things are underfunded. We'd like to have more crisis intervention at the sheriff's office, more partnership with mental health. And we have some of the best partnerships in the country. We've been recognized as exemplary with our partnerships with Common Ground and our diversion to get mentally challenged, mental health challenges, moments from people that are in that crisis to go to counseling rather than to jail. And on so many levels, we do things that almost no one does, but there can be so much more, and this is evidence of it. So, Adam from Community Mental Health Center.
Well, pardon me. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to come here and speak today on this tragedy, and I'll just share a few things with you. Oakland Community Health Network stands ready to meet the needs of the community. We have a very wide array of services and supports. We have services and supports for people who are insured all the way to underinsured and uninsured. So a couple ways that people could get to us is through our access and crisis lines. So we have our non-emergency access phone number, which is 248-464-6363. We also have our customer service phone number, which is 800-341-2003. Now, the customer service line is one that I really want to share with you because that's one that anyone could call at any point, and they could talk about something that's going on in their life or in the life of a family member. And we've got some really excellent, dedicated, trained staff on that line, ready to answer the questions and then provide any resources that we would have from people who are currently involved in the system to people who would like entry or would need a higher level of service. We also have a significant amount of community crisis services available for the people that we serve. And then we have our community partner here, Common Ground, who's going to speak about that a little bit further.
Sir, could you give us spell your name and your title so we have it, please?
Yeah, my name's Adam, last name is Genovi, Genovai. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at Oakland Community Health Network.
And next up is Kristen Blevins from Common Ground.
Hello, thank you for inviting us to speak. I am the manager of our mobile crisis team over at Common Ground. My name is Kristen Blevins, as you heard. I'm here to talk a little bit about the different opportunities that we have for people who are in acute crisis within the county. The nice thing that we provide is the opportunity to connect you not only within our specific organization, but throughout the county to other core providers. So if we can't specifically help you, then we can connect you to other core providers because we are part of Oakland County Health Network. The best way to utilize our services is to either come in, and we're open 24/7. Our lobby, we have clinicians who can do assessments. We connect you to different resources. We also have the opportunity to receive phone calls. Our line is 24/7. The resource and crisis help line would be the best way to call us. That's an 800 number, 800-231-1127. And again, you can be connected to someone to just discuss your crisis. We can help you process it. We can connect you to different resources. We encourage you to come in if there's a need. We have some of our services that we offer are our mobile crisis unit, obviously. We can go out into the community and meet you wherever you are in the middle of your crisis. We have our crisis hotline 24/7. We have our CRU, our crisis unit, where you can stay for up to 2 weeks. We have our new urgent care, behavioral health urgent care. That's all telehealth, so we have lots of different opportunities, and however we can help, we would love to be there for someone who's in crisis. So, and it doesn't have to be just for yourself. If you notice someone else who is in crisis, for example, in this specific instance, please feel free to call us, and our mobile unit can go out. We can encourage someone to come in. We have many different options, so.
What is the address of your office?
So we are actually just right around the corner, and we're 1200 North Telegraph, Building 32E, just right across the street.
It's behind the health department, right on campus.
As I've learned about this woman, I understand she went through so much trauma
Yeah.
that her children's dad had been murdered and the trial was underway. Can you talk about, as someone's going through such trauma, even if they don't have a history of severe mental health crisis, a couple family members didn't know of anything in the past, how that could definitely cause a crisis?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the wonderful things about Common Ground and why I came to work for Common Ground in the first place is we don't get to define what crisis is. So if you feel that you're in a crisis, if someone in your immediate family or your friends notice that something is off, then you could be in crisis. You can call, you can send a referral, and then we can go and we can help and we can connect to those different resources. And the unique thing that our follow-up services offer is we can help you navigate through the system, because as simplified as we try to make things, if you don't speak this language, it can be tricky. So having that ability to guide you through the system and connect to different options is invaluable.
Sheriff, can I ask you a follow-up question? Sure. We know that this happens in communities all over America, especially in these cold winter months. And there's a lot of policies in place at various police departments. Is there anything here specifically you'd like to see be done policy-wise to maybe see if there's more that deputies can do to help prevent this situation, or really what else can police officers do in this situation to help someone like this?
Well, we're already proactive, so we'll look for people, or if we see people. We have a lot of programs. We run a Coats for the Cold, where we collect thousands of coats every year. We just concluded that. Now they're in the process of being given out. We have gloves and mittens oftentimes in the cars. Our deputies are alert to not having appropriate clothing, and they talk to kids. And so our Pontiac substations especially focused on that, because you'll often see folks out in the street of the community that may not have the resources or those situations. We partner with some of the shelters and with the mental health community. So if it's just homelessness, and I say just because that's a massive challenge on its own, but if it's homelessness and not necessarily a mental health component, then we'll seek to connect them with a shelter or some other kinds of services. If it's got a dual componency, like where you have mental health plus homelessness, which often is the case, that sometimes is what leads to the homelessness, then we'll partner with our mental health providers and look for process on this. And I'm coming back to the state and federal government. This has to be a priority, and they have to be giving non-encumbered grants to communities. It's so important to me. A year and a half ago, we had to cut our budget by $1.3 million at the sheriff's office. And in that moment, I actually cut more than that, and then added back 2 positions that are strictly focused on mental health. We have a mental health practitioner that is embedded with our Pontiac substation that goes to calls, and we have a peer-to-peer person that's full-time that focuses on mental health internally and also partners on external. So that's the kind of priority I made it, even when I had to cut a big chunk of money. I felt we needed to go beyond that to bring this into the fold. But that's not clearly optimal. We need to have that broadly based, and the state and the federal government could have a wider array of services and continuum services than is available. And through grants and a process, there's a way to get there. I also want to add that oh, she went behind me. We have County Commissioner Angela Powell from Pontiac, represents Pontiac here. She was over there, and she moves quickly.
Sheriff, can we get back to Monica Kennedy and her children? What do we know about them? Where did they live, or where were they living? When did they start wandering and door knocking for food and the like?
Well, they have an apartment. I think most of this crisis was based on our preliminary information, was based on a mental health crisis. They had housing, and they had family that cared. So, and friends as well. So, again, I'm really trying to drive home the point that it's so ever present these days, mental health challenges. I know our deputies at the scene are having, issues themselves, having to deal with kids and mom, and that the totality of that, and it's in everything. Like in the last 2 years, police officer suicides outstripped the line of duty deaths. So you're seeing it in all walks of society and in the community, and we're trying to address it, but that's obviously not our main wheelhouse. We're trying to bring in more resources. We're doing more and more training. We're pushing out, as I said, embedded mental health practitioners with our patrol deputies, but it needs to have a higher level of attention on state and federal funding.
What do we know about her family and their attempts to get her help? And was it that she was just not interested in getting help? Or was she on anybody's radar with the resources that are available? Was she on the radar, and what was being done to help?
Apparently the family was trying to get her into help, trying to get her committed and get some help, and she refused and fled. So she wasn't even at her apartment.
Can you provide some specifics, if you have them on the timeline, meaning had this been over the course of days or weeks in terms of family trying to help, and had she been out with her kids?
At least a few days, but I don't know if it was beyond that. With one of the investigators is here.
The mother said that she had noticed a change for about 3 weeks, and that she noticed that she showed up to the house on Friday with the kids, and they were cold and not.
Okay, so for those that can't hear because of the microphone, that the mother had noticed some change in behavior about 3 weeks ago, and she showed up on Friday with the kids, and they were cold and shivering and not appropriately dressed. So apparently it became a crisis point somewhere in that time frame.
So were they literally wandering out in the field, out in the elements, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Yes.
How close to Crystal Lake were they when they were found?
Pretty close, because I believe at one point we have information that the mom went down to have a drink at the lake. So they were in proximity.
Go ahead.
Jump in here for a second. Talking about the family trying to connect with services, was that the problem, or was the issue that you all couldn't find her? Was there a drone out there looking for these folks? So I'm
Well,
asking two different questions. Do you know how many contacts or efforts were made to connect with the available services is one, and then the other one is, in the effort to search for them, what resources were deployed by your department?
From our side, we were not called about a person or kids in crisis. We just would get an occasional call, hey, there's somebody in the area that doesn't look like you're appropriately dressed. Deputies would go there and look, and they weren't there. So we didn't have anything on our radar about a particular mom or 3 kids or a crisis. Just, hey, you might be aware somebody's on the street and they look like they're cold. In terms of the family, it's my understanding that the family was trying to get her into counseling, and she fled. She refused.
Did they connect with any of these services through CMH? Like, that's what I'm wondering.
I don't think they got to that point because she was refusing. I don't think they can't complete the second step without the first saying, okay, I'll go.
So how was this preventable, really?
It was preventable if we all communicate with each other. I mean, at that point when the family knew a crisis was developing, if they call us or call these phone numbers, then we would have popped up assets to look for the kids and the mom. We would have known it was something more than just maybe somebody was walking down the street and didn't have a coat on. Big difference when you find out that she may have been out there with the kids for days and she's in a mental health crisis. We would have deployed a huge amount of assets had there been that communicative process where family members and us and mental health all had the complete picture without.
Had deputies seen the family, then they could have done something. They just couldn't find these people.
Yeah, and we didn't even know who they were. At that point, again, it was just, hey, there's somebody walking down the street, they're not wearing a coat and it's super cold.
And the family members didn't feel comfortable calling 911 to ask for your help?
I can't answer that for them, but they didn't.
Sheriff, can we talk about the little girl? What was her inkling to go for help? Did she express that to investigators at all, or I guess kudos to her for?
Yeah, they all laid down, mom told them to lay down and rest, and they all laid down in the field. The girl that survived woke up. No one else did.
Wow.
Can you talk a little bit about her husband? What do we know about her late husband who had been murdered?
I don't have a lot of information about him.
Do you have an idea on him? Do you have a name?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we can get that to you.
Do we know what triggered the mental health crisis? Was it
In terms of what started from.
what triggered her
As I
to?
said- As he said, 3 weeks ago, the mom noticed a change. We don't know what was the triggering for that change because we never had any communication and mental health services never had any dialogue. So none of us in the room had it on any of our radar.
Sure.
And that goes again to the point where, the councilwoman said, we all have to have hard conversations about mental health. She said it to me in my office. And the community has to work together to make sure people that are in crisis or going in crisis or have had trauma, have had PTSD, have issues that are challenging them, know we all got to talk to each other and find the path forward.
So the family tells me that the children's dad was murdered in November 2021. Does there need to be extra resources for crime victims or survivors of such trauma too?
Yeah, I mean, especially, without question. And that's something we always encourage and try to provide. But again, that goes to resources. I mean, I'd love to be able to assign follow-up to everybody that's ever been a victim of a serious crime. I know there's different funding sources for it. There's some within the prosecutor's office and in other spots. But, in Common Ground, there's Vine. I was on a national work group on that. But there could be more. I mean, when you're a mom with 3 kids and the father of your kids has been murdered and you've got things going on, there needs to be more integration of those services.
You're talking about early intervention, because at the stage she was in the last week, she wasn't going to be inclined to reach out for any kind of help,
Right.
even if she was in a mental capacity where she could. It sounds like she wasn't there.
And if mom noticed that there was something off, something changing, and she felt comfortable and even knew the phone number, maybe that's the time for a phone call. And then, there's a collaborative, okay, what can we do now to intervene to help in this situation?
Well, the comfort is the word that you're using. If she's comfortable, and that suggests a disconnect, which I've covered for 9 months now in the city. There are folks who aren't comfortable making that call.
Well, if it's not to us, we're talking call mental health services, call anybody. And that's what we're saying. We have to have that hard conversation in all communities. Cops were always, well, I'm tough. I don't need anybody to talk to. And, the councilwoman spoke to how and you can speak for yourself on that. Go ahead. You spoke very eloquently in my office about that.
Good afternoon. So we have to start having candid conversations about mental health, especially in the African American community, because in the past we were not always taught that mental health is an asset. Sometimes you're mislabeled when you call. Sometimes you're scared. In the past, you've been shunned when you say you're having a mental health crisis. And so what I believe is when we start having real conversations and making mental health a normal conversation, that's how you can change the community. Because what normally happens is when you have a mental health crisis, you are scared because you don't want to be shunned. You don't want to be mislabeled. You don't want to be ridiculed. And sometimes, especially as an African American woman, we are taught to be strong. It's called the strong women syndrome. And when you have the strong woman syndrome, you don't want to ask anybody for assistance. And then you get to the place where you feel like it's not worth it. And so what we have to keep reiterating is that mental health is real. It is something that is normal. It is something that is treatable. It is something that is valid. And most importantly, that you can get the right cognitive therapy or the medication that you need to balance it out. As a person who deals with a mental health crisis in my own life, I constantly have to make sure I understand that it is about the long-term healing. And that only starts when we have real, candid conversations and not shun away from those uncomfortable moments.
Could you identify yourself, spelling name as well, please?
Yes, my name is Melanie, Melanie, Rutherford, Rutherford.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What was your job title, miss?
I'm the councilwoman for District 1 where this incident occurred.
Thank you.
Sheriff, I had 2 questions, please, in regard to, when if they were underdressed or seen walking underdressed, kids have coats, how were they found? What were they wearing, what were they not wearing, do we know?
No winter attire, right? Mom had a coat, and I believe the daughter took the coat off of mom when she came to, which was pretty amazing.
No gloves, no coats.
Generally, no.
And can you provide any more information in regard to, the issue the mother was grappling with about fearing people were targeting her or her family? Do you have any context of how long she may have been thinking this? Had family said this had been for weeks, or was this a recent development, or any clarity you can give?
Well, all that we have so far is that the mother said a change in behavior was about 3 weeks ago. So obviously, mental health crisis, and not unusual in a mental health crisis for people to have paranoia, to have the fear, somebody's watching me, somebody's trying to kill me. That is pretty usual, quite frankly, in what we come across in the street.
Well, especially after a family member's murdered, I would think that would heighten the fear.
Absolutely.
Is there any possibility the fear was legitimate because the trial just happened?
We don't see any connection to that fear being realized, and it's my understanding that the family just thought she was having a crisis. There was nothing tangible.
What were the ages of the kids?
3 and 9.
10.
Are you naming?
Oh, and the surviving child was 10, yes.
Could you spell the children's names, please?
Yes. So the 9-year-old was Kyle, Kyle, Milton, Milton, 9. And then Malik, Malik, age 3, also last name of Milton. And then the young lady in the hospital, she is 10.
Sheriff, where was it that they were found? Was it near the water, in the field, in the vehicle?
They were in a field.
Not even in like an abandoned vehicle, because there are several on that property.
They were in a field.
Are there any cameras out there that would tell you when they went out there? I know there's signs that say that there's cameras in the area. I don't know.
Nothing that we've got so far.
Was one of the vehicles left there, their vehicle?
No.
So they, and distance from their apartment, did they walk there?
They had been walking all over the area, yes.
Do we know how far from their apartment to where they were found?
Maybe a mile.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, sir.
Do you guys, Mayor?
Obviously, this is a horrible, heart-wrenching tragedy. I want to just reiterate what others have said, which is please seek help if you're out there and you're struggling with mental illness, please seek help. If you know someone who is struggling with mental illness and not seeking help, please reach out to the providers of mental health services on behalf of the person who's struggling. There are services out there that you don't have to have insurance to access. So I really do, as we seek to prevent this kind of tragedy from occurring again, I just want to emphasize how important it is if you're out there and you know somebody going through this or you yourself are going through this, please seek help. There's no shame in this. We really do have to get past the stigma around mental health. When people have a broken leg, they don't hesitate to seek medical help, and mental illness is no different. So please, please seek help whenever it's needed.
Let's talk about warming centers or of the ability to get warm. There were more resources 5-10 years ago. There aren't as many, there are fewer than 200 emergency beds available for people who are homeless. Not that in this case that would necessarily apply. The city's been talking for months about affordable housing and creating an environment where people who are marginally housed can find a place to be. Are there any innovations there? I would not probably have helped this lady because she had a home, but what is the city doing for other people? You just broke up a big, not you personally, but there was a big camp over on Union Street that in the fall was taken down, and some people were offered resources, but they didn't accept those resources and are presumably still on the street.
There are resources available for those who are homeless. Again, this is a situation where sadly this family, while they had a home, apparently the mother was struggling with mental illness, and that really, from all of the reports that we've received so far, that really is the crux of this situation. Is it was a situation of untreated mental illness, and that's why I really want to emphasize the importance of seeking help for those who are mentally ill.
Hello, again, I'm County Commissioner Angela Powell, and I want to join in with my colleagues in this tragic situation. And I just also want to just put extra emphasis on family and friends to please intervene. You know, we have individuals, we just had a case last year where we had a young lady who was locked up, and she was offered resources within the jail, but she declined. So again, we know that that is another issue with mental health, with individuals fighting mental health issues. So I just want to again stress to all individuals, families, friends, please intervene. So it won't be on your heart and your head that you didn't step in time to try to save individuals. So please, as a community, let's all step in and try to help anybody to get any assistance, because I do know for a fact, as a county commissioner, Oakland County has several resources to help mental health individuals, homelessness, everything. We are locked in step with our sheriff department in making sure, even with our city elected officials, and making sure that those resources are here when we hear about them. So please just keep us informed, but also please, family and friends, step in to help people that you may see is struggling with something. We all have, especially since COVID. Post-COVID has put a whole nother layer on mental health. So please, thank you. Yes.
In the case of Ms. Wilson, who ended up in jail and is still in the county jail, has declined any kind of mental health. They can't even do a really proper evaluation on her, from what I understand. Not a story I wrote, Aileen Wingblad did it. But you can't force someone to take that sort of support. You have somebody in a safe place right now who's rejecting the mental health services available to her.
I understand that, but
is there another step that needs to be taken, you know?
the next step is just to continue to offer it. And somehow we help this lady to take the offerings of the resources being offered, so that it's not on our hands, it's not on the family hands, that they did not provide the resources that she needed, or to even do the evaluation and to do anything that's necessary. And I know the sheriff department has tried everything. Prosecutor's attorney, we've tried everything. So at this point, we just gotta keep that lady in prayer and just hope that she will eventually grasp onto those resources and get her some help, because clearly she needs it.
I just want to ask one more thing. Just, you mentioned you're urging family to do things. It sounds like Ms. Kennedy's family did do what they knew they were able to do under the circumstances. There's no blame being assessed to the family members.
No, it's not. No blaming. Nope. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just trying to forewarn all individuals to please just step in. One call can go a long way, and you don't even know how that will help a person. So I'm not pointing fingers. The family did what they could do up until that point, and I commend them for what they thought that they were doing to assist in any way, shape, or form that they can. But I'm just also doing an extra calling to make sure that everybody step in, especially with the trying times we are experiencing now. Thank you.
Sheriff, I apologize. I had one last question. You alluded to it, and I'm sorry if I made you repeat yourself. The 10-year-old girl, her condition is last we know it, and are there family members she will go to, or does she become adoptive services, protective services, or what happens here?
She is in stable condition, and when she's discharged from the hospital, she'll be with her family members.
By stable, you mean non-life threatening? Life threatening? I know there's.
You know, you don't know until you know, but it appears that way.
Is she facing any amputations or anything like that, thinking about being so cold?
Nothing at this point. She appears to be recovering well. You know, that's our hope and prayer, obviously. And to your point, you know, again, that goes to, it's not finger pointing, but it needs to be a more cohesive, communicative effort. And it's not just this, it's everything. I mean, we've talked about this with school threats. If a kid hears something at school and tells his parents and they don't tell the school or tell us, that's an issue. That's a challenge. So we have to communicate and then make sure that that child, if he's got something going on, gets the mental health resource or whatever he's got going on. If we aren't all looped in and talking to each other as a community, people and problems will fall through the crack.
I have one more question for you folks. What's your capacity? You know, we're gonna write these stories and you may see an uptick in calls from family members or people who are experiencing crises. What's your capacity to help them over the next few days or even over the long term?
Ready?
What does that mean? Can you help 10 people or 150?
I mean, you really can't quantify it. It's because it's the nature of the crisis service, and you can't say, yeah, there's different programs and there are different variables to it. So it's really hard to say that, you know, we can serve 10, we can serve 100, we can serve 1,000. But we accept the challenges. We see ebbs and flows with the calls that comes in, with the call volumes. So we are staffed, we're ready for it, Common Ground is ready for it. So just give us a call.
I think people might not understand too, if someone's not lucid and they're a danger to their children, they don't need to be willing to get help.
Right, exactly.
About that a little.
Yeah, if there's a danger to themselves or others, that's something that we can do a committal on. And so I guess in the communication phase, if the family sees something's going into a dangerous phase for that person or their children, that's when the communication has to occur in a broad base, either with mental health providers or us, so that intervention can occur.
I think families might be afraid because they don't want someone who's going through a mental health crisis to lose their children long term. Can you talk about that?
I understand the fear, but look at the outcome, right? So you have to balance any decision with, we have to make sure that they're okay today, so there will be a tomorrow.
But you don't immediately take away someone's children. Like if you picked up this family Saturday,
No.
they might have been hospitalized, but it's not an instantaneous thing. What is that process? What are people's resources?
Well, you know, CPS, Child Protective Services, would be brought in. It would be a holistic approach. Potentially, they would work with probate or whatever they need to do. No, it's by no means instantaneous, and it's focused on taking care of the people at that moment in time, and then later they figure out what's the best long-term plan. But you've got to, again, solve today's problem before you can look towards tomorrow.
Were there any other factors involved? Did they do a toxicology on Ms. Kennedy, or was there any other?
Toxicology will take some time. Anytime you do tox screens, it takes a period of time, but there's no indication that it was, because all the kids passed as well, right? And the daughter that survived gave us no information that there was any substance activity.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.